Welcome to Hard Knock Life. I'm Keith Chow. This is a special edition of the podcast. Special edition, no pun intended. We're going to be talking about Star Wars Celebration, and I brought on Lauren Lola, who was repping us at Star Wars Celebration in Tokyo. She is back from her adventures in Japan. Welcome back to not only America, but welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Keith. I am so jet lagged. So if I sound a little incoherent, that's why.
Well, this wasn't your first celebration, was it?
No, it's only my second and my
It
first overseas one.
your first time in Japan?
Yes.
So before we get to the Star Wars of it all, how was your experience in Japan?
I
Because it
love
was like a
Japan.
bucket list thing for you, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. I've been wanting to visit ever since I was a teenager. And so 2 years ago at Celebration London, when it was announced that it was going to be in Japan, I'm like, I mean, I've always wanted to go to Japan. And any Star Wars fan probably knows that like a lot of the main influences are from like Akira Kurosawa films. So I felt like, well, this is the perfect opportunity for me to go. And I did.
Well, it was that's one of the cool things about it being in Tokyo this year is that, as you said, like the Japanese influence on Star Wars is, present from the very beginning. In 1977 is pretty much George Lucas's take on Hidden Fortress.
Mhm.
What was it like being at a Star Wars celebration in Tokyo? Like, how did the local folks kind of embrace it? How did, I'm sure there was a mix of, Japanese fans and like international fans at the convention. What was the overall vibe of, this celebration of Star Wars?
Right. I mean, on one hand, it didn't feel that different from like the previous celebration and just conventions in general that I've been to. It on one hand felt like any other convention I've been to. But I think the main difference is just that yes, it's in Japan, so you're gonna be seeing a lot of translations and like um, like on the live stage, for instance, there will be like Japanese subtitles for those who maybe don't speak English. I think the official report, if I'm not mistaken, is that half the people in attendance were from Asia, and that I think 30% are from the US, which I was very surprised by the number. And yeah, it really did feel like that. It felt like a good mix of fans from all over the world, with Japan and Asia otherwise being the dominant presence there.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
and the other thing about, and you know this as a longtime Star Wars fan, you've kind of covered it on the podcast and the website.
mhm.
The Asian influence on Star Wars goes beyond just, Akira Kurosawa. There's like, I used to make the joke that the only Asians in Star Wars growing up was like the Nien Nunb in the Millennium Falcon, maybe the Nemoidians and Queen Amidala's wardrobe. They were like those were the only Asians.
Well,
But
there was that one guy in the original trilogy
right,
who
the
was
the one
pilot.
guy in the one pilot in the
Yeah,
in the original trilogy, but and then I think in the special edition of Return of the Jedi, one of the Twi'lek dancers was an Asian woman.
yeah.
But so not slim pickings for
Hmm.
for 40 years, but the new incarnations of Star Wars, the post Disney Star Wars there's been way more Asian representation. So much so that like, the post that I made back in I think 2017 when Last Jedi came out is completely obsolete now because we've had since then, Carson Teva, is that his name? From Kim's Convenience, who plays the pilot in Ahsoka, and
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
you got him, you got the Lee Jung Jae character in The Acolyte, you have Manny Jacinto, you have just so many more Asians in Star Wars that to have the celebration in Japan, and plus you have like Star Wars Visions, which is like what if Star Wars but anime.
Hmm.
Like, what is your kind of take on Asian representation in Star Wars and how it's evolved since, kind of like Rogue One and Last Jedi kicked the doors down?
Hmm. I mean, it's kind of like what you said. Like I remember when you made that post about, Asians in Star Wars, and yeah, like if you were to do that post now, it would be really long because there's so many since then. It really feels like Disney has been making up for lost time in the last decade of getting to get as many Asian folks into the canon as much as possible. And I'm seeing that. Does it always land well? Not necessarily, but I think with more projects and with more opportunities for people to come into the door, yeah, there's just so much to look forward to. It's nice to, you know, for like people like us to see ourselves to in a project as universal as Star Wars.
Right, and then you've spoken to like not Morgan Elsbeth. You've spoken to the actress who plays Morgan
Diana
Elsbeth,
Lee Inosanto,
Diana
yes.
Santana. Like and Ming Na Wen is as Fennec
Yes.
Shand. We got Natalie Bordizzo as Sabine. Like it
Hmm.
is a golden age of Asians in Star Wars, and it just made sense, I think, to have it in Asia. Um,
Yeah.
being there on the ground, what was your biggest takeaway from the whole weekend before we dive into like the specifics?
Biggest takeaway. I mean, I kind of went into it with no expectations other than what I experienced from, the only other celebration I've been to, which was in Anaheim in 2022. But I think my big takeaway is that the folks behind Star Wars understand that there is a deep appreciation for the animated projects. I feel like anyone who's maybe more on the outskirts of Star Wars who don't follow it as closely as I do, maybe don't recognize just how good quality the animated stories are. And so there were a lot of announcements around the fact that it's the 20th anniversary for Lucasfilm Animation, which I didn't
Hmm.
realize, and also like a continuation of Star Wars Visions, which I know we'll get into and all that. Um, yeah, I think that's my main takeaway, as well as all the other announcements that come in the live action forms
Yeah.
too.
Well, I mean, speaking of announcements, I think the Darth Maul series was probably one of the bigger announcements at the
Yeah, and
show.
they only showed like a bit from that for only a few seconds from their little Lucasfilm animation montage.
But like Sam Witwer kind of like doing the voice and everything, I think really that was one of the highlights. I mean, the cool thing about Celebration, I think they started this maybe a couple years ago, is that they stream everything live, which is cool.
Hmm.
And it's awesome that it was in Japan, so like it streamed at a very like opportune time for me to watch because it was like at night because the
Yeah.
13-hour time difference. So I was like
Hmm.
I was pretty much watching all like the interviews with like Hayden and Manny and everything, and all the although they didn't, a lot of the announcements they didn't stream. So like some, I think you guys got to see like footage from Mandalorian and Grogu and stuff like that.
Oh,
So
right.
they
Yeah.
didn't
I
show
mean,
those on the stream.
yeah. Yeah, I know that for things like that they don't show them. It's just for like, if you're in the room, you get to see it.
Yeah.
I didn't go to that panel though for Mandalorian and Grogu because I only was there on Saturday and Sunday. I didn't have a
Mhm.
batch for Friday. Um, but yeah,
So what were some of the panels you did get to go see live in person?
I went to the panel for Ahsoka.
What's brewing for season two? Other than I think Hayden is going to be like a full on cast member next year, and not just like a secret.
Yeah, he's coming back. That was announced. It's kind of like what you were saying, how like they'll show snippets for just for those who were in attendance at the panel, and they did that for Ahsoka too, even though they technically haven't started filming it. So how do they do it? Well, Filoni showed us this old school esque trailer put together using concept art as the visuals, and it went very, very quickly. So there was only so much to see. But I think if you're a fan of Star Wars Rebels, I'm happy to announce Zeb will be in season two. So very excited to hear that because
Hmm.
I think we've only seen him so far in like briefly in season three of The Mandalorian. What else was in that trailer? There was so much. It went very, very quickly. I'm tempted to say that I think maybe we see Ventress at one point, although I'm not sure. Again, it went really fast, but there's a lot in store. Some of it was a little hard to comprehend, but yeah, I'm excited and I'm
I
glad
mean,
they.
Ahsoka, you're talking about the animated stuff, and Ahsoka essentially became like a continuation of Rebels. Like
Mm-hmm.
the live, like if you wanted live action Rebels, that's basically what Ahsoka is. I mean, it reunited, at least like what 3/4 of the Ghost crew in the first season, and then like you said, Zeb will be in next season.
Yes.
Um, I'm sure they'll find a way to bring back Kanan. Get Freddie Prince Jr.
Mm.
to come back or something as a Force ghost. Even though I don't think he knows how to be a Force ghost, but with Ezra being, I'm sure, a bigger portion of next season as well.
Mm-hmm.
Like, did you ever think when you were watching Rebels like 6 or 7 years ago that you would see like live action Rebels?
No, I don't think so. And I think that's mainly because it was 2018 when it ended, and trying to see like, oh, who's going to make the transition live action? That wasn't really a thing yet because we were in the midst of the sequel trilogy at the time.
Hmm.
And so like what was it, The Last Jedi, and then also Solo were the big projects to come out of
Hmm.
Star Wars at the time. So I wasn't really thinking in the same way I am now about, you know, animation versus live action. So never would have expected it, but I'm glad we're here.
Other than Ahsoka, any other panels you got to be in on the ground?
See, that's the tricky part with Celebration, which, if we discuss the cons of it, I could dive into it more. But yeah, like it's tricky trying to get into the panels you want to see. I was fortunate to have gotten a panel reservation for Ahsoka, which is why I
Mm.
was able to see it. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have been able to. But the only other panel that I saw was on the last day, and it was about the Fett family. So it was a conversation with Tamora
Nice.
Morrison and Daniel Logan.
We happen to be two New Zealanders, two Kiwis, two Maori. No reira e mihi ana ki a koutou katoa e ngā mana, e ngā rangatira o tēnei whenua o Japan, ka nui te mihi ki a koutou katoa, me ngā manuhiri tū wārangi, no ngā hau e whā, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou. Christian, that simply means, on behalf of me and Daniel, the mountains and waters of New Zealand, we greet the mountains and waters of this land. And to all the visitors from the four winds that have gathered here in Tokyo Celebration 25, greetings, salutations, felicitations, kia ora tatou katoa.
Being on the ground, like when I asked you like what was surprising about Star Wars Celebration, I mentioned I did get a chance to watch some of the streams, and
Mm-hmm.
it was, to me, it was very apparent during Manny Jacinto's interview when they have this big stage that they do all like the celebrity interviews that
Yeah,
at
the
least,
live stage.
yeah, for the television audience back home. But
Mm-hmm.
it was cool that, like, there's been a lot of controversy over the Acolyte because it didn't apparently do so hot ratings wise. There's all the backlash from the terrible people on the internet, and it got canceled. And even though, like, it sets up a really interesting future story,
Mm-hmm.
they kind of swept the whole thing under the rug. So to me, it was actually heartening that they brought out Manny Jacinto to like give a long interview, and the reception he got from the crowd is what I took away from at least watching it 3,000 miles away, is that
Mm-hmm.
I think oftentimes, and this as a Star Wars fan, being a Star Wars fan on the internet is hard because
Yeah.
there's so many terrible Star Wars fans on the internet whose whole
Yeah.
like mission is to be rage baiting people that
Yeah. And I'm just like, do you not have a life outside of that? For God's sake?
but that's why it's heartening that something like Manny Jacinto's reception for the Acolyte got the reception that it got, to show that like those guys who are with the terrible thumbnails on YouTube who are just like bitching and complaining about everything woke about Star Wars is a vocal minority. And we should
Mm-hmm.
stop, and we being like Lucasfilm should stop listening to them, number one. That's kind of what happened
Mm-hmm.
post Last Jedi, right? Like they let the toxic fans drown out the voices of like the reasonable people. And if anything, like seeing how Manny Jacinto got accepted and the reception the Acolyte got, at least at Celebration, shows that the Star Wars fans are really, they're more of us than them, is I guess what I'm trying to
Yeah. Like honestly, Keith, I had a ticket to get an autograph from Manny, and I never got to it because the line for him was so freaking long. I went
say.
in the morning and the line was barely moving. And by the time I was getting kind of close, I knew I had to go and get in line for the Fed family panel. I'm just like, oh, I
You had
really
to
hope I
pay.
don't regret this. So I got out of line. And then towards the end of the day, I went back in line and it was even longer than before. And it was still barely moving. And and by the time 3 o'clock came around, I'm just like, I have 1 hour left of celebration. Do I really want to spend it in line, especially one that's
Right.
barely moving? So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't get to meet him, unfortunately. I'm just like, ah, man, how dare he have followers? But but like that just goes to prove your point, Keith, which is that like, yeah, people have been really happy to see him. And being Filipino American, getting to see a Filipino wait, he's Canadian.
Yeah.
Filipino North American.
I was gonna say, I
In
was
a-
about to say same difference, but we can't say that about Canadians and Americans anymore because
I know.
they
Yeah.
have a
But
right to
getting
hate
to
us now.
see a Filipino person in a prominent role in the Star Wars project was just really cool to see, especially as impressive as the Acolyte. So I would have loved to have gone to meet him, and I really hope he does more conventions so I can have more chances.
Yeah. I know you weren't at the Mandalorian and Grogu panel, but like, what is your level of so just to set the table for a little? The most recent pod Dominic and I did was all about Pedro Pascal because
Right.
the Fantastic Four trailer and The Last of Us, and
Yeah.
of course the Mandalorian, where he's like always playing father figures. It's like he's being typecast.
Yeah.
But what is your level of excitement for the Mandalorian and Grogu? Because I will say, like, mine's tempered because like I really love the first season of the Mandalorian. The following couple of seasons I don't love as much as that first season, and I don't know if I would rather have like another season or like what are they trying to story are they trying to tell with the movie, like where so I have cautious reservations about the movie. Where are you in the Mandalorian and Grogu? I also don't like the title. I'll just put that out there. I feel like it's the most unimaginative title you could come up with for a Star Wars movie.
I wonder if it's meant to emulate like Werewolf and Cub or something like that.
Yeah, Lone Wolf and Cub. Yeah, I'm sure.
Mandalorian and Grogu. Oh, I just realized that. Yeah. I
crazy.
mean, I'll see it.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't had a Star Wars film since 2019, so this is long overdue in that department. But I guess I'm just curious to see where the story is going with it, because I feel like in season 3 in particular, it kind of like it had a purpose in the fact that the Mandalorians were finally able to take back their home planet, but as far as their journey goes, I'm a little confused as to where it's headed. And so my hope is that we'll get more direction with that with this upcoming film, and then I'm curious to see what will come after that.
Yeah. I mean, there was also like, I guess half of Boba Fett was the Mandalorian season 2.5 too, right? Like that was the other weird thing about Boba Fett. Yeah, no, I'm with you. And do you think they'll go back to being a TV show, or will it just be he graduated to the movies and they're only going to do movies now?
That's why I'm wondering too, because usually when there's a film following a series, it's kind of like, oh, this is the finale.
Right.
So
like Community, 6 seasons in a movie.
Yeah, like as far as the film goes, like did they even film it on the volume? I'm not even sure. So like would that be considered too low budget for a feature film? Because I don't know. But
was Pedro on set?
Yeah. Was Pedro on set? I'm assuming yes, since there are pictures of him without the helmet. But yeah, I don't know. I'm just kind of like, let's see what happens, and just watch it unfold.
Yeah. The other live action announcement, I just want to get out of the way, and then we can kind of talk more about your time in Japan. Was Sean Levy came out, said they're shooting the next Star Wars movie, Star Wars Starfighter, starring Ryan Gosling. We don't know anything else about it. I'm glad it's Ryan Gosling and not Ryan Reynolds. I said this on.
I was about to say that. I'm just like, thank God it's not Ryan Reynolds.
Sean Levy and Orion, I guess, is as long as it's one of the Ryans. Yeah, where are you there? Because again, we know nothing about it other than it's about to shoot and that it's Ryan Gosling. Do you have any excitement for this?
I was surprised to hear it, and I'm kind of confused we didn't get anything more, like a synopsis or something. I mean, the fact that it's gonna be coming out right around the 50th anniversary of the original Star Wars, I'm just like, well, I hope it has the same energy to align with such a significant anniversary like that. But I don't know. And again, like we know nothing about what this film is about. I'm just like, why Ryan Gosling though? Because again, better than Ryan Reynolds. But one thing
also,
that
why Sean Levy? Because I'm not a big fan of his either, to be completely transparent.
Yeah, I mean, like he directed Deadpool, right?
Deadpool and Wolverine, and
yeah. I mean, I don't know. I'm not
he
sure.
Also, I mean, that's why I
feel like this is kind of a missed opportunity for, again, like we were talking earlier about seeing an increase of Asian representation. I'm just like, why did you hire these two white guys?
The two white guys.
Yeah, one of them being an A-lister. Because like one of the main one of the main things about the Star Wars films in particular is that it's been a platform to turn unknowns into these, heroes of this Hallmark franchise.
Right. That's an excellent point, because like I can't think of an example of like a super A-lister being in a Star Wars movie.
Yeah. Well, I
I
mean,
mean,
except for the prequel trilogy.
that's true. Ewan McGregor was pretty well known by the time. Liam Neeson, Sam
Natalie
Jackson,
Portman. Yeah, I
Natalie
think
Portman. That's
maybe.
true.
Yeah, I mean, like Hayden Christensen. I'm assuming yes. I
Yeah, he
don't know.
was he was like, yeah, he was newly introduced through Star Wars. I don't think he was he definitely wasn't an A-lister before Star Wars.
Okay. Yeah, I
Um
was really young at the time, so like.
yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. Natalie Portman was a big star.
Mhm,
Sam Jackson was one of the biggest stars in the world.
mhm.
Ewan McGregor was kind of like on the cusp of, he was a big indie star,
Yeah,
but
and
not
like
like
I guess he was like
mainstream.
mainly known in Scotland and the UK.
Yeah. Like Trains, because he'd already done Train Spotting at that point. Liam
Mhm,
Neeson was a pretty big star. He wasn't as main list, mainstream A list as he is now when he
mhm.
did Star Wars. Like he was still more of kind of, maybe I would say, like B lists. Oh no, that's not true, because I think he had done Schindler's List already, so he was already pretty well known. Yeah, you're right. I completely forgot about the prequels being like filled with mainstream actors. Because the original trilogy, yeah, Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, and Harrison Ford were not, A-list at the time. So Alec Guinness was probably the most famous person in the original Star Wars movie to be.
What about James Earl Jones? Was he?
Well, I guess, I mean, he was famous, but he was only voicing, so it wasn't really like
Yeah.
people were going because of him. So
Mhm.
so yeah, those are I think the biggest announcements. Am I leaving anything else? I know there was Visions season 2 was announced,
Season 3.
or 3. What else was that? Was there anything else? There was another animated show, I think, wasn't there?
Yeah. So, like, in addition to there being Vision season 3 coming out in October, but one of the shorts from the original first season, The Ninth Jedi, will be getting a limited series coming out next year.
Excited.
Yes, that's one of my favorites from the first season is The Ninth Jedi. So I'm excited to see what that story will become.
What do you like about, what is it about the animated stories that appeal to you so much?
Like the anime one specifically, or just animated in general.
Just in general, because I know that, like, the Visions ones are special, and again, being in Japan, there's an added element of the anime inspired Star Wars. But just because, as you said earlier, like, Lucasfilm Animation's celebrating its 25th anniversary this year, and
Hmm.
and there are a legion of fans. There's a whole like portion of the fandom where their favorite thing is Clone Wars. Like, like,
Yeah.
there's people my age who grew up on the original trilogy. There are people your age who grew up on the prequels, and there are, kids coming up now that are growing up on the sequel trilogy. But there's a whole faction of people, when they think Star Wars, they think Clone Wars. That is like their main thing. So talk
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. And you make a point in the fact that, I was at the live stage when Ashley Eckstein was interviewed, and she even asked the audience, how many of you, grew up with Star Wars with Ahsoka as your go-to? And that was
Mhm.
so crazy seeing the hands that went up in the audience. Um, yeah, I mean, like as far as the animated series go, I mean, aside from, having more of a budget to really get to play in the world of Star Wars that you have more constraints with a live action production. Um, yeah, I mean, it's allowed the opportunity to expand on the different characters that we either know, introduce characters that we don't already know, and also just tell more in-depth stories than the live action counterparts. Like even with all the live action shows that we have now, it's still, I would argue it's still not as in-depth as we have gotten with shows like the Clone Wars and Rebels and the Bad Batch. So it's just really, for me, it's about that level of storytelling that we get in the animated series that is one of the reasons why I personally gravitate towards them.
Yeah. Any before we wrap up the talk about Star Wars, anything else stick out in your mind from your weekend and the news announcements that came out of the whole convention?
Mm, well, I guess a big question for a lot of us would be like, oh, where's the next Star Wars celebration going to be? It's going to be in LA.
Oh, okay. Back
Yeah.
to California.
Yeah, they're going to bring it back to the US. And I can see why, because it's going to be held in 2027, which will be the 50th anniversary of the original Star Wars, by which point the Lucasfilm Museum will already be open, which I'm assuming is the driving force behind having it there. But I guess, I don't know, just given the political climate that we are living in, I'm just like wondering what's it going to be like 2 years from now for those who are abroad being able to come here easily to
Yeah.
celebrate Star Wars.
Well, yeah, we'll see. Well, it's funny how that story about fighting fascism is no longer relevant anymore, huh?
If only.
So yeah, I want to put a pin on the Star Wars talk because again, you said that Japan was always a bucket list place for
Hmm.
you,
Yeah,
and you know we follow each other on Instagram. I did see you went to the Ghibli Museum.
I did.
Tell me about that. Tell me about your experience there.
It was lovely. There was so much about it that didn't surprise me in terms of, in terms of who Miyazaki is as a person. For one thing, it's located in a park in Mitaka. Um, like seriously, like if not that far away from it is a blooming cherry blossom tree. So that didn't surprise me too much. There were no photographs allowed inside the museum, which I already knew. And so it was nice to not have the pressure of having to document everything. I just take it all in. I saw a short film that you can only see at the museum called
Right.
Koro's Big Day Out, and that was every dog owner's worst nightmare coming true in animation. But it was very cute and very beautifully done. And even though there were no subtitles for it, I think that's maybe, a mark of good filmmaking, which is that you don't have to understand the language to understand the story. So
Yeah.
I thought that was very well done. And oh, I'll say this: one of their permanent exhibits has a series of like artist studios just to show someone what goes into the making of an animated project, particularly for Ghibli. And I think that for anyone who's used that stupid AI software to create Ghibli style images needs to see that part of the museum, if anything, just to show that, you taking like a few minutes to copy someone else's artwork and also taking away from the environment on top of that, like you
Yeah,
need
it
to
goes
see
against
this to wake up.
it goes against everything Miyazaki stands for. Like those
Exactly.
AI images, like on every level, because they're
Yeah.
like computer generated, as you said. Like AI is very environmentally, deleterious. So like everything that Miyazaki stands for, the people who engage in that Ghibli AI filter or whatever,
Hmm.
don't understand. I mean, and half of them probably didn't even know they were making Ghibli specific, images because it just got
Hmm.
popular. Like,
Yeah.
like when the freaking White House is Ghiblifying their horrific, you know, immigration enforcement, we've lost the plot.
Yeah. Exactly.
Any other bucket list things you got to do while you were in Tokyo? Because you were only in Tokyo, you didn't get a chance to really venture too far outside. Like, if you had a chance to go to Nagoya, you could have gone to the actual Ghibli park. You
I
know.
know. Yeah. Yeah. I had to make a hard choice. I figure it'd be wisest to just stick to Tokyo for this trip. Because I think anything else beyond that would have been maybe a little too out of the way for this trip at
How long were
least.
you there? How many days?
I was there for a little over a week. So I was there from the 13th to the 21st.
Oh,
And
you
that just,
literally
yeah,
just
so
got
I just
back.
got back last night.
My goodness. And you were like, I gotta talk about it with somebody. I don't need to rest. I don't need to do it. I just gotta talk about my trip. So yeah, did you go to like the Shibuya crossing? Did you get to
I
mix into
did
that
Shibuya
scramble of
Crossing,
people and
yes. I did Shibuya Crossing, and that was a sight to behold for, all street crossing lovers. This is the paradise for it. And if you want to play
you
that
could go up to
as
like a cafe and like look down
I
on
did,
people.
I did
Yeah.
that. I went to what's it called? I think Max Park or Max Place, whatever it's called. Yeah, I did that. I went to Team Labs. I went to Tokyo Disneyland. I went to two Pokemon centers.
Nice.
It was honestly unintentionally a celebration of a lot of my favorite franchises.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe the only exception is Avatar: The Last Airbender, but I think that's only because I don't think that show ever aired in Japan. So,
Yeah. I don't think
but
it's
if
very
it
popular
did,
there.
I'm sure there would be something for it in Japan.
Yeah, so you were in Akihabara. I saw. I'm just going off your
Akihabara.
Instagram right now, and
Hmm.
Shinjuku. So you've really got to see most of like the main neighborhoods
Hmm.
in
Yeah.
Tokyo.
Yeah.
What was your favorite?
Oh gosh. Um, I don't know if I have a favorite. I haven't really, again, I just got back. I haven't really compartmentalized to be like, what was
You
good,
still
what
like,
wasn't good.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't
How
know.
about let me get more specific. What's the best thing you ate when you were there?
Best thing I ate. Um, One that comes to mind was at Tokyo Disneyland. They have a Baymax curry there, which was really
Oh,
good.
nice.
And then upon seeing it, you're just like, I don't want to eat this. It's too cute. They make Baymax out of rice, and then he's sitting
Yeah,
amongst like two different types of curry.
nice. I've never been to Tokyo Disney. That's one place in Japan I haven't been. How does that compare to the other Disney parks?
I think the one in California has a lot more to it. I take that back. The one in California has a lot more to it. I think I can't compare it to Disney Sea because I didn't go to it, but I have a
Mm,
feeling that if I strategize my schedule just a little bit better, I could have hit it up. But yeah, I think there's a lot to Tokyo Disneyland that, if you've never been to, definitely should go because there's some stuff there that you'll only find at that park. Like for instance, they have a Beauty and the Beast ride that is beautifully done. That I was very fortunate to ride.
mm.
Um, they have a Baymax ride, which is very cute as well. They have a tiki room, which I know there's one in California, but this one was taken over by Stitch.
Mm.
Yeah,
The live action Stitch?
no. I think it's just like normal animated
Normal
Stitch.
Stitch. Okay.
But I get your point there. It's like it's funny how I went to it the year the live action Stitch is coming out. Also for It's a Small World. I don't know if this is the case for the California Disneyland right now, but in at this It's a Small World, Groot was taking over it.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
that's interesting.
and other Marvel characters too.
Does Marvel have a big presence at the Tokyo Disney?
Not as much as um California Adventure.
Mm. So yeah, I mean, this probably won't be your last time in Japan, I'm assuming.
Better not be. By the time when I was getting ready to go fly back, I'm like, I don't want to leave.
Yeah, that's everybody's experience leaving
Yeah,
Japan.
it's
Is that you don't
safe,
want to.
it's clean, the people are really nice, the food is really good. There's no crazy person running the country. What more can you ask for?
At least you had no issues getting back in the country, right? You were fine there. There was no.
No, I had no issues, thankfully. I did bring
Yeah.
a burner phone with me because of, all that's been going on.
And you're here freely speaking with us and not locked up anywhere. So thank God for that, Lauren.
I know. Yeah, I legitimately was very worried about that when I started hearing more about this kind of stuff happening. I'm like, should I still go? But I'm
Yeah,
also like, I've been planning this for months and I haven't been out of the country since 2009. So
right.
I'm like, I got to stick to it and just, hope for the best, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I'm
But
glad you
yeah,
went. I'm glad you had a good time. I'm glad you got
mhm,
to cross that off your bucket list at least.
yeah.
And again, you're probably the biggest Star Wars fan on the site. So
Mhm.
thankful you were there at Celebration. Any last words before we wrap up?
Go to Japan.
And don't come
Just go to
back.
Japan.
We should
Yeah,
just go there and stay.
yeah.
At least for the next 4 years. Maybe we'll just camp out. Anyway, Lauren, thanks for doing this. Thank you for spending your recovery time talking about your trip to Star Wars Celebration. How can folks, if you want them to, find you on the internet?
Mhm. I'm on Instagram and Blue Sky at Echo Lauren Lola. Not on Twitter anymore. Took a while to
Don't
get off
blame
of
you.
there. And yeah, you just follow me on there. I'm finally posting pictures from Japan on Instagram. So if you want to see that, go check him out.
Cool. Any projects you're working on right now?
I am well, right before I went to Tokyo, I came out with a new comic book at WonderCon called Mix, which I co-wrote with Patricia Janelsa, which is part of the Lumpia franchise. So if you want to go get a copy and you're not within vicinity of a place that's going to hold an event for Lumpia, Yeah, go to kidheroes.net. But I am working on a second graphic novel right now for Struggle and Strength, which is where Dustig was published through. I don't know when it'll be out, but that is in fact in progress.
Awesome. That's very cool. Very, very cool.
Thanks.
Follow the Nerds of Color at the Nerds of Color on all social media platforms. Subscribe to the podcast, Hard Knock Life at hardknockmedia.com. That's it for this special edition of the podcast. Thank you to Lauren for repping at Star Wars Celebration, and thank you all for listening. Until next time, we'll be back.
Yeah.
May the Force be with you.
Yes, may the force of others be with you.
Fanboys, professional artists, and professors. Maybe a nerd who's just like you, talking about the things that you like too. So I invite you to the NOC. In full color, you see me. The Hard Knock Life. Comics, movies, and TV. Yeah. Pop culture with a different perspective. Watch it on your screen, hit play, so check this.